Reading is a key element of your studies, and yet we don't spend really much time thinking about how do we read. I mean, just these things on this table is a kind of selection of the sorts of things that students read, that academics read every day. Textbooks, other monographs, journal articles, whether digital or on paper, and of course, an important item that you have in the PSMP course, which is your digital learning guide. These learning guides are very important texts, but like other textbooks, they require particular reading practices. So if you understand the genre, you are much more likely to read effectively when you are getting through your textbook. This means you can save a lot of time, because I know that saving time is very important, especially when you're also working full-time. So what I want to do here is I just want to walk you through some of the ways that you might approach the ebook for PSMP to get the most out of it in the most efficient way. Now the first thing is, you'll notice I have printed this. This is my teaching copy. It's the latest one for Unit 3. I printed it a while ago. And these post-it notes, are real. So this is what I stuck in here as I've been working. And this shows you, I think, the value of having a print copy. I can also read it online, and I have read sections of it online, as indeed you need to, because some of these sections give you the opportunity to watch videos or to link to other items online. That's the beauty of a digital text. Now, I recommend having a print copy simply because a print copy is easier to navigate, but you can do this online. So I suggest the first thing you need to do is make yourself familiar with the guide. You don't need to start reading at one end and read to the other. What you want to do is you want to get a good sense of what's in here. So when you're writing your assignments and when you're preparing for the workshop, you know where to go and you know what's there. So the first thing you might do is what I think Roland Barthes called cruising the text. And literally, that's what you do. So the very first time I saw this text, I did some cruising. Which simply means that I am skimming along. I looked at the contents to kind of get an idea about how the various modules are structured. I just looked at the titles, so I could see that, there's a whole introductory chapter here which spends time explaining how the book works, and definitely worth reading. I noticed that, the modules on responsive governments, I saw the different topics. And I also took note, of course, that Module 6 in this particular guide spends a lot of time helping you think about the workplace project. But I didn't actually read anything to start with. Rather, I flicked through it and I tried to get a sense of how it was structured and what was here. And I could see exactly that there are little icons throughout which are meant to help you figure out what you need to do with something. So when you know whether a reading is recommended, essential, or optional. Then after that, of course, you want to read it more deeply. And this is where you need to be very clear about the purpose of the reading. So, if the purpose of your reading is to prepare for the workshop, you would firstly check which items you have to read. And then I suggest that what you do is you go to the particular chapter that you need to read in preparation for your workshop. So, for example, in this unit, you would start with Module 1, trying to understand what responsive government is. But I'm jumping ahead here in a way because I forgot to point out that what I did notice when I went through in my skim was that there's a whole section in here on key ideas and concepts. That's always good to know where that is, so you can return to those terms to enhance your understanding as you go. So if I was preparing for the workshop and reading Module 1, what I would do is, again, I would do a closer skim of this actual module. I would have a look at what is actually going to be covered and get a sense of where it's going, because if you know where you're going, it's easier to make sense of it along the way. It also helps to know how far you have to read, because I'm a fan too of thinking about allotting the right amount of time to read something. If you give yourself a limited amount of time to read, this certainly helps you read more efficiently. It helps you focus. So I would look at this and think to myself, I'm going to make sense of this in half an hour. So I'm going to concentrate on what's here. I'm going to have a look at the learning objectives first, and then I'm going to try and keep them in mind while I read the rest. I'm going to make sure that I try and do some of the reflective activities, because they are there to help you think while you're reading. They will help you be active in your reading. And this is how I would move my way through. I would also be taking notes, either on the hard copy or on a separate note. I think it's very important to write in your own words points that are of interest. And try to ask questions. Try to think, what would I like to ask a facilitator when I got to the workshop? Which bits don't gel or chime with my workplace experience? Which bits do I think we could explore further? So these are just some ideas about how you might think about questions as you go, which will help you a lot. If you're going to be using the textbook, however, to do your assignment, that is when you would have a slightly different approach because your purpose is different. So you would work with the e-guide and next to you the actual assignment brief. You look exactly what it is you are required to do, find the key terms in the assessment and look for information on those topics in the guide. And what that means is when you're reading a section on the guide, for example, reading about defining networks, and the assignment requires you to identify some networks, what I would be doing is reading this section thinking, how will this help me answer the assignment brief? You can be that strategic, that pragmatic. So I would be thinking, this might provide me with a definition. There are types of networks. I could try to use that to think about the networks I'm finding and whether or not they fit these categories. I would also be looking then for advice about how to understand the governance perhaps of networks, but also looking for any readings that I might be able to read further. And at this point, I would also make decisions about having at least a look at the abstract of the optional readings as well as the recommended and essential readings. So what you are doing is you are actively reading in the context of what you need to do for your assessment and hopefully at the same time actually writing the assignment.